In a day and age where shoes feel like they're getting softer and softer, it's become increasingly hard to find a supportive trad shoe. Great though it is to be able to feel every pebble and every rugosity beneath your feet, that's no good if you can't stand on a hold for 30 minutes, fiddling in a shonky wire, building a belay, or trying not to have a panic attack. The Generator and Generator Mid buck that trend, with bagfuls of support, all-day comfort, and a surprising amount of performance too. Throughout this review, we will be looking at both the Generator and the Generator Mid. Whilst they have a lot in common, they're similar, but not the same. And whilst many will be drawn to the Mid, simply because it looks kind of cool, kind of retro, it's actually the Generator that is probably the most appealing for the majority of climbers that are out there. As well as comparing them to each other, we'll also be comparing them to the TC Pro, because if we didn't, it's inevitably the first question that would be asked in the comments afterwards. Before we go too much further, it's also worth emphasizing that we are coming very much from a UK perspective, much like we did back when we reviewed the TC Pro. We don't have any big walls in the UK, and today we've been climbing at Stanage. So whilst we'll reference their application elsewhere, our focus will firmly be on the UK cragging and mountain cragging environment. The Generator is designed first and foremost with trad in mind. However, we feel it would also be suitable for big, long, multi-pitch routes on sport. It's just that we don't have many big, long, multi-pitch sport routes in the UK, so it's a moot point. The Generator is stiff and supportive, but once you've used it, it's surprisingly sensitive too. And in fact, I've been consistently surprised by the Generator throughout the last few months of use. It isn't what I was expecting. It would be very easy for a shoe like this to be quite clunky and, like the TC Pro, take an eternity to wear in. Now, once the TC Pros were worn in, they were fantastic, but in that lead up, they were quite awkward and unnatural to climb in. The Generators wear in much, much quicker in comparison. Although I definitely recommend wearing them in a single pitch environment like this, or maybe even wearing them indoors a little. Don't just buy them and go straight onto your 25 pitch multi-pitch route. When it comes to their performance, we'll focus on three main areas: their edging ability, their ability in cracks, and finally, their sensitivity. When it comes to edging, there isn't much more you could ask for out of the Generator. This is an edging machine. This comes as a result of three different factors, and the first of which is its Flexan midsole. This has a full-length 1.4mm Flexan midsole, and it's got curved edges, which essentially brings about a greater level of support and stiffness. It's also got a full-length Vibram XS Edge sole. And this is the stiffer of Vibram's compound, designed primarily, as the name suggests, with edging in mind. Scarpa have also done some clever things with the shape of the sole. They've actually given the shoe a little more arch support as well, which helps with not only its lateral stiffness, but its torsional stiffness as well. And we'll come on to this whilst we're talking about jamming. And finally, the tri-tension system binds all of that together, looping from the very back to the very front of the shoe. The end result is that even while sized generously, the Generator still gives good edging ability. The level of support within the shoe not only makes standing on small edges possible, but comfortable, and comfortable over long periods of time, irrespective of whether you're on a single pitch or multi-pitch. Something else that adds to the Generator's credentials as an edging specialist is simply the way in which the toe box is constructed. There's enough space within the toe box that your toes can be ever so slightly engaged. And there's enough room and volume over the top of your big toe in order for this to happen. The Generator's next specialism is cracks. Now in the UK, we actually have very few pure cracks, and even fewer people who'd call themselves crack climbers. However, a lot of the routes we have here do have cracks, and the ability to use cracks proficiently and efficiently will no doubt benefit you. There's several features on the Generator that are designed to help you out whilst crack climbing, and one of those is the rand. This features Scarpa's proprietary M70 rubber. Now this isn't quite as sticky as their M50 rubber, it's a little more durable than that, but it's still really grippy, so much so that you really can notice it, locking into place whilst torquing your foot into cracks. They've also extended the rand around both sides, and there's plenty of rubber over the top. Now this has several benefits, the first of which is just to make the shoe that bit more durable. The second of which, whilst you're climbing in, there's just more rubber to catch. And finally, the rubber actually protects your foot. It makes it more comfortable to jam and torque your foot into place. The other benefit of having it so far round is that it doesn't matter whether you're in a finger crack, a hand crack, or some sort of grizzly off width. There's enough protection no matter what you're climbing. We've already talked about the importance of the big toe whilst edging within the toe box. But the other side is actually where the magic happens as far as jamming is concerned. It's been perfectly sculpted and curved to fit around the shape of your foot. There's plenty of rubber, but that curve also helps lock those jams into place. It feels really secure. And if that weren't enough, there's a little bit of padding over the top of the toes just to provide you with that little bit extra comfort. Were there to be a potential downside of that toe box, it is potentially within that big toe. Because your feet are a little engaged and not completely flat, depending on how you size them, they may not be quite as well suited for thin cracks, really slender seams. Finally, there's the matter of sensitivity. Now, when you buy a shoe as supportive as this or this, you're not buying it because of its sensitivity. If you want something that's sensitive, it's probably best buying something else. But I've been really impressed with how sensitive they've been once worn in. And the wearing in process, remember, doesn't take too long. I've been consistently surprised with the amount of feedback you get through the shoe. And I can't quite put my finger on exactly why that is. But there's something in and around the way it flexes that means that you can get as much rubber to rock as possible. And whilst you may not get granular detail, this does, after all, have 4 millimeters of excess edge rubber underneath it. You do get a really good feel of what's going on, surprisingly so. As a part of the review process, I've climbed using these on some fairly tenuous gritstone slabs, expecting to feel terrified, but actually I felt super solid and secure. So when it comes to the Generator versus the Generator Mid, there's definitely appeal to the Generator Mid, not least because of its cool, retro, high top look. But at the end of the day, it's definitely a significantly more specialist shoe. Aside from the fact that it's got a higher top, the key to its difference is actually within how that high top is constructed. The increased height gives them a slightly stiffer feel than the Generator itself. And the neoprene collar has a lovely, luxurious feel that's backed up by an abundance of protection and padding around the ankle. However, a side effect of that padding and the lining that stretches down into the shoe is that it does give it a much warmer and slightly sweatier feel, noticeably more than the Generator. The Generator, in comparison, feels much more suitable for the majority of climbers out there. Granted, it doesn't have that ankle protection, but for most climbers in the UK, that ankle protection is a luxury as opposed to a necessity. And it also feels a little more light and nimble on the foot than compared to the Mid. It also feels a little cooler because it doesn't have that lining around the sides. In short, if you're looking for a big wall or specific crack climbing shoe, check out the Generator Mid or the Generator. If you're looking for a much more all-round UK trad shoe, check out the Generator. When it comes to fit, the Generator is neutral, both in terms of its width and its volume. It's also got a pretty central toe profile as well. And this, alongside the full-length lacing, means it's got the ability to fit quite a wide range of people. When it comes to sizing, I went down a single UK shoe size to get a comfortable and precise fit. When it comes to the question that everyone wants to know, how does the Generator compare to the TC Pro? The answer isn't an easy one because they're both very different. They fit very, very differently. The Generator has a little more breadth and volume within that toe box compared to the lower volume and slightly narrower TC Pro. At the back end, the TC Pro has a much wider heel compared to the more sculpted narrow heel on the Generator. That low-profile toe box on the TC Pro potentially makes it better for slender cracks, but the toe box on the Generator definitely makes it a stronger edger. Another key difference, aside from the width and the volume, is the toe profile. The Generator has a central toe. it's relatively neutral compared to the more asymmetrical toe of the TC Pro. The TC Pro probably has the edge on pockets and slender cracks, whereas the Generator has the edge on everything else, particularly edging. Another area of difference is around that collar. Whilst the TC Pro does have some padding, it doesn't have much, at least not compared to the Generator, which not only has a lot of padding, but also that luxurious neoprene collar. Perhaps one of the most noticeable differences is in the time it takes to wear them both in. The TC Pro feels like it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get into a comfortable, climbable state, compared to the Generator, which felt like, in comparison, it took only a few outings. Construction-wise, the Generator definitely feels like the more sophisticated and modern of the two, but the answer as to which one is going to fit you the best is only going to be answered by getting both on your feet and seeing which one suits you the most. All in all, it feels like Scarpa have upped the ante once again, and the Generator and the Generator Mid have the potential to be the ultimate trad shoe. They're supportive, comfortable, good on edges, great in cracks, and surprisingly supple and sensitive when you need them to be. But cool though the high top might look, it's actually the Generator that is the one that we feel is the most appropriate for the majority of people trad climbing in the UK.